got married 2 months ago. So I do have two stepsons and I have a daughter who's 10 years old. So they help me with all of the rescue stuff. I've been a lifelong resident of Shrewsbury. I graduated in the class of 2000. I have an identical twin sister and a younger brother. I started with animals probably around age 6. I found a blue jay that had a broken wing, and it sort of spawned from there. My grandfather served in the Korean War, and I have photos of him holding helmets full of puppies while he was overseas. And, he came back and just really opened my eyes to helping animals. So I do work full time for a local research lab called Charles River, and I am the animal behaviorist there, and they are fantastic to let me do volunteer stuff. We have 8 hours a year that I can use. So I utilize that throughout the year to do these programs. I worked at Tufts Wildlife Clinic for many years, where I gained a lot of experience from hummingbirds all the way up to black bear and lynx and bobcats, fox and coyote. I do have permits that allow me to rehab state and federal, so I can do anything from a squirrel. I could do fox, but I choose raptors. Raptors are my passion. So for that, you need a permit from U.S. Fish and Wildlife because they are federally protected birds. So a raptor is anything that has a talon. So hawks, eagles, falcons, merlin, kestrels, they are all considered raptors. Vultures, it's a debate because they do have talons too, but some scientists don't agree that they are raptors, but we'll take those in as well. So I do help around in town. I am permitted to do other things, but raptors are the number one thing that I like to do. With COVID, we've had the first year, it was insane. Tufts was closed, so we took in lots of overflow from them. 24/7, we have a lot of state police, animal control, the fire department, the local police department. Callers can find me online, it's listed. And then I started my own rescue group. This is going on year 3 for that. So we became a 501c3 last year, which was great because we can take in donations and we can make them tax deductible and have grants that weren't available before. So that was a big step for us. And it's just myself and my husband because of a lot of the liability issues. It's not the same as feeding baby bunnies. When you have these raptors, you have to be trained so you're not getting really injured with the talons, which I've experienced and I've seen. So we want to make sure anyone who's coming here is fully trained with handling and caring for the birds. In the springtime is where we see lots of baby animals falling to the ground. They fall out of the nest. Sometimes it's normal for them to fledge, and other times they're injured. So in the springtime, we do have more availability to let people in as these babies can't cause as much harm. They don't know how to use their talons on you. I'm also a veteran. I served overseas in Iraq in 2003 and came back and continued my coursework for veterinary science. So things about raptors, they eat all meat. That's all they eat. They don't eat any bird seed. They don't eat fruit or veggies. If you see one doing that, it's probably starving and there's a problem. So they rely primarily just on meat. We feed mice and rats and chicks, sometimes quail and small birds. So I do have to get that from a lab. We'll purchase that and they ship them here. We can't use a lot of people offer, they found some mice or they've trapped some in their basement and they want to know if we can use them, which is very nice. But one of the biggest things people do is they put out rodenticide, which we can talk about after as far as how bad that actually is for the environment and for, pets, your kids, your grandkids. It's toxic to all of them. And when you put it out there and a small animal eats it, it just keeps going up the food chain. So if they see a dead or dying mouse and they eat it, it immediately stops their blood from clotting, and it's very serious. And we've seen many animals pass away from that. So what I'll do is sort of talk a little bit about barred owls. I have one barred owl named Blue, and she's not releasable. So it's illegal to keep any wildlife as pets. Blue was brought into us from an agency, from Mass Wildlife, and you have to have an additional federal and state permit. So I have 2 state and 2 federal permits that allow me to give these programs and to take in animals that are injured and treat them. I do have a background in vet science, and I'm a certified veterinary technician. So I will Usually if you find an animal, we've worked a lot with Westboro and also Hopkinton animal control. One has struck a window or gotten hit by a car. Basic things we do is we'll get the patient in, get a body weight, and then I can weigh them to get the proper amount of fluids, just like you'd give a person IV fluids. We're giving fluids to stabilize, pain medication, and we can offer food or force feed if we need to give them nourishment. So there's sort of a veterinary and nursing side to this that we provide. Anything that's requiring an x-ray or additional medical care, we work closely with Tufts Wildlife Clinic. So I can get the birds there, get their assessment. If they're needing long-term rehab, they'll come back here. Almost all the babies, all of the young falcons, hawks, owls will come back here because it takes a lot of resources and a lot of food and training round the clock. I'm very lucky. My job is 5 minutes away, so I can get up at 4, feed at 8, go to lunch, come back on my break, do it again at 2, come back at 4 and feed again at 8 to make sure that they're getting all the calories, because these baby birds require constant feedings. They eat probably 3 to 4 times the amount that an adult would because they're growing so quickly. So diet is really important. The aspect of assessing and figuring out what the injuries are. Again, I'm not a veterinarian. I have to work with one and make sure those life-threatening injuries are treated, but we work back and forth. Sometimes I'm at Tufts 3 or 4 times a week, exchanging boxes of animals. We've had 3 eagles come through. We had a nest of peregrine falcons that failed at an Air Force base. So the base does not allow these birds to nest due to the fact that planes are flying in, and it can be catastrophic to have a bird strike. So the nests are removed, and then we have to figure out, well, where can we put these baby falcons that are federally protected? So I'll take them from anywhere for a week or 2, feed them up, get them to a nice healthy weight. And we actually have an infertile couple that's in Lowell, at UMass Lowell. So the Mass Wildlife will get that box ready, and we will transplant these babies to a new box because the moms can't count. So if we find one down on the ground and it's not doing well, we don't know where the nest is, we can put a baby owl with the same type of owl and she won't count. So if she's at 2 and we add a 3rd one, she'll continue to feed it. That's a process we do called renesting. So these owls that come in and hawks, we will work with local climbers. We did it just recently in Marlboro last baby season. And we work with a climber to get these babies back up in the nest. We can put a camera on them for a few days and just make sure that the situation's under control. They're getting the nourishment, they're getting what they need, and then we'll take the camera down and they fledge out. But what I'd like to do, I'm gonna grab Blue, it's just gonna take me a minute. So normally we do all of these programs outside or in schools. COVID has been really tough. I have to do 12 programs a year legally to possess her. So if you know of anyone else that's looking for a program like this, please let me know. I have to do 12 by law, and they are free. I appreciate donations, but they're definitely not necessary or required. So I'll grab her, but she's very smart because when we're home, she knows she can get away with a lot more than when we're out. And it sounds funny, and you might not notice it, but I will. So when I have her on glove, she's usually very calm and very quiet. And the kids or anyone they're very respectful of, keeping their voices down. And she might go to the bathroom and the kids get like a big kick out of it. But when we're home, it's a whole different ballgame, like a child where they know they can do something. She acts a little bit differently when we're here. So I'll let you know if there's some cues for that. But I'll bring her out. I'll just tell you some structural features about owls, explain a little bit more of why she's here. And then I'd like to show you the outside. Right now, I only have one red-tailed hawk. We released a great horned, a red-tail, and 2 American kestrels. So the cage itself it's not full, which is good for me, meaning there's not a lot of animals getting injured, needing help. But normally we have much more than just the red tail. So if you bear with me for 1 second, I'm just going to go grab her. So this is Blue. Blue is going on 3 years old, and she came to us from Mass Wildlife. I had not intended to do educational programs. I was just intending to do rehabilitation of wildlife. And when I was approached about her and heard her story, it definitely got me interested in the fact of being able to share the fact that she isn't releasable and showing people, being able to show someone up close and personal what a wild animal like. and just explaining the situation. So Blue was illegally kept. Someone found her when she was down on the ground as a baby, and they kept her for probably 5 weeks, and they fed her chicken and beef, raw chicken and beef, which is definitely not the appropriate diet. So Mass Wildlife actually had to get involved in Mass Audubon, and they were threatening legal action against the people who were keeping her. And then she showed up in a box with a phone with some contact information. So they knew that this was the same owl as someone was seeking out. How do I keep it? What do I feed it? So she came on the scene, and I applied for permits. It can take upwards of 6 months to get permission. So I have permission to possess her. She has indoor, outdoor access. In inclement weather, she's not outside. She's just not conditioned to it very well. So she's here. She's not my pet. We use her as an educational ambassador, and she travels to just sort of be able to show you up close and personal what an owl is. And we'll explain some structural features. But again, if you ever find one, feel free to call me. My number is posted online. Reach out to your animal control. Never try to raise an animal or treat one by yourself. So some really interesting things are, if she tries to fly off the glove, it's called baiting, and it means she's irritated with me. She might try to pop off the glove. If she's rousing, it means she's fluffing up and sort of her feathers are calming down. That's good. That means she's in a relaxed state right now. She's not in a super relaxed state, but I explained when we're home, she feels like she can get away with a lot more. So their eyes are huge. If we had their size eyes in our skull, our eyes would be as big as softballs. So that's how much their eyes take up of their skull. And they're fixed. They're fixed so they have to be able to turn their head. And it's not true that they can turn their head all the way around. It's only to 270 degrees. So they have 14 bones in their neck, whereas the human only has 7. So that can show you how much rotation is occurring. Their vision is 35 to 100 times better than ours, which is pretty amazing in dim light. Of all the animals, they have the best night vision of any animal. So again, you can sort of see her turning and looking around. And so not all the way, but very, very close. Their hearing is really interesting as well. They can hear, see, that's baiting. They can hear a twig snapping from 75 feet away. And that's super important because a lot of their prey is small and they have to be able to hear and catch that. They do have ear holes. And if she lets me show you, usually she might let me show you. Also is happening when we're home. There are slits on either side of her ear. And one is higher than the other. And the purpose of that is to channel sound. So it acts as like a satellite dish. I apologize. Hey, it's just the mailman. Irie. So these 2 slits that are here, one can be higher and the other one is lower. That's very important for different positional sounds. These things that are happening so far away, it channels it in and funnels it in. So they can figure out if it's hitting this side first, this is where our prey is. If it's hitting this side first, this is where we need to go. So it's sort of triangulating that. And thinking about the snow right now, it's so important because they still have to survive. It's not the summertime where it's easy to spot things or there's no covering on the ground. You know, we have the ability to DoorDash and go to the grocery store. Everything that they eat, they have to capture. So that hearing is very important. And it's pretty neat, the fact that how it's funneled in and that sort of purpose. The facial disc, it's a big gathering of feathers right around the front of her face. Hundreds and hundreds of these tiny feathers. And that also is very important because it works as a satellite. It's almost if you were sitting there with your hands like this behind your ear to funnel in those sounds. And all of these are special adaptations to help them survive and also avoid predators. So that's really important. And just a very interesting feature of these owls. Barred owls are named after, I'm sure you can guess, the barring on their chest. So they have all these bars that are going down They camouflage incredibly well. They're usually in deep forests. Hawks you can see along the highway, open fields. These guys are deeper into the forest. They're common around here. We have tons of them in Massachusetts. Their home range is about 5 miles. So every 5 miles, they say there's another one owl or a pair. And right now they are getting ready to mate. So we have Blue here, and right now around 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. every night, and I have pictures I can share to you, we have an owl that comes, and it comes and sits outside, or it sits by her cage, and it will call out to her, and she calls back, and it's incredible, but also sad because they will never obviously be together. But every night this owl shows up like clockwork to see her because it is breeding season. So they will start pairing up now. They don't technically build their own nests. They live in deep forests, and they are more into cavities. So they'll use a hollow out tree. Most of the owls I've seen in the wild when they're raising young are in cavities of the trees. That's different from great horns. Great horns are huge, and great horns are one of the predators to barred owls. A great horn will eat a barred owl without question. So that's also an important consideration of these adaptations they have to protect themselves and to keep going to find food. What else is important is silent flight. So they're silent, and if we were in an enclosed space and I had a bigger way to show you, I'd have you close your eyes, and I would have her be tethered and sort of still get a little bit of a distance. You won't hear her flying, and it's important, one, for her to be able to catch her prey, and two, to be able to avoid predators. So I'm going to show you. So I'm sorry, we did have a barred owl that it didn't make it, and we worked with a biologist who helped us harvest some of the parts. So when we're at schools or programs in the public, we will pass around some items and props so you can get a better sense of, you know, what I'm feeling and what I'm seeing, what an owl, actual owl is all about. So here is a wing. This is a wing of a barred owl. This is how big it is. It's pretty big. And right on the end of all of these flight feathers, they have primary, secondary, tertiary, all these feathers serve a purpose. There's these tiny little tick marks. And this fringed end on the feathers helps to break up and scatter the sound and allows them to be silent, again, to protect themselves and to catch prey. So also their feet are covered as well. So this is the talons of one of them, and they have a bunch of papillae on the inside. They do not feel heat or warmth the same way we do. If you think about it being super hot out and they're touching the pavement, or now it's freezing cold and they're on a branch. There's these special adaptations that allow them to sit in the snow or sit in a puddle and not have any sort of, their thermal regulation is different than ours. People ask if they migrate. They actually don't migrate. Some owls do. These guys don't. Snowy owls will come and go. Barred owls, great horns, very common. But another adaptation is their feet are fully feathered. There are feathers all the way down the toes. This is one of the legs of one that unfortunately didn't make it. So that's important too. It also allows them to be silent in flight, and it's protecting them from the New England elements. Pellets. So raptors produce pellets. Pellets are the bones and the skin, fur that isn't digestible. So there's crops and gizzards or different sort of parts that are, I won't get into too much, but when they eat these items like mice and rats, they will eat them whole or in just a few bites, but they can't digest those pieces. So they will regurgitate them. So if you're out walking in the woods and you see what's called whitewash, which is all down the tree going to the bathroom, that there's a very good chance that you have found an owl nest site. You've found a great spot to look around and look up and see if there's one present. I saved the pellets. So this is what a pellet looks like. I dry them out. I know it grosses out some people, but in class you may have dissected one. I did when I was in school. They're all different sizes. And this is bones and the fur, sometimes feathers, depending on what they've eaten. And we also learn a lot about them in the wild, in captivity, I'm sorry, because if they're different colors, if they're green, it could mean they're not feeling well, things like that. We want to make sure that they're digesting the meat and the tissue, and that the stuff that is not supposed to be digested is coming up. So I make sure and count and make sure that the wild ones, Blue's pretty on point with her schedule of eating and producing these pellets. I do keep a closer eye on the ones outside. So yeah, feet's covered in feathers. They're laying eggs now. Well, February to March, they're starting to mate up. They have 2 to 4. They incubate them for 30 days. And then I usually start getting calls in April or May. That's normal, where we start to see people finding these babies on the ground and in need. So that's when we sort of kick it into high gear. Any of the animals coming in now, because there's no babies, it's trauma season, we call it. Some of the major reasons why we get these birds in: rodenticide, poisoning, putting out stuff. There's other humane ways: snap traps. Don't use glue traps. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. If you live in a place that you're seeing these black bait boxes every 6 to 8 feet, that is one of the rodenticides that we try to discourage people from using. We see soccer net entanglement, so we ask schools when they're not using those to take them down. It's incredible how many birds get stuck in those, and they just wrap and wrap and wrap and wrap, and we have to cut them out if we get there in time. Fishing line, huge problem. I see them at the Wachusett Reservoir, right down here at Dean Park, where I'm right across from. A lot of the time, the fishing line gets caught on them. That is a serious injury, and it can be fatal because it cuts so quickly, it cuts off the circulation. Pesticides, they wiped out, DDT almost wiped out peregrine falcons and eagles decades ago, and now they're on the rise again, thankfully. We have a nesting pair of eagles here in Shrewsbury. The line, poisoning from lead. So people who fish that use sinkers try to use an alternative, even ammunition. We see eagles feeding on dead carcasses of deer. It only takes a tiny, tiny amount, and they have neurological issues and they're down. And there's drugs that you can kind of counteract and pull the lead out of their bloodstream, but it's a process, and it can easily be preventable by not using those lead objects. So they're all federally protected. You cannot shoot, harass, possess. They're covered by the Migratory Bird Act, and they should be. There's very special laws making sure that they're given the best chance for survival. I don't know if you guys can see how big she is, but if you had to guess how much she weighs, feel free to throw out some numbers if you want. So this is sort of my favorite question, if you had to guess how much you thought that she weighs.
20 pounds?
25 pounds?
20, 25. So she weighs 1.5 pounds.
What?
Yeah,
What?
isn't it crazy? So she's so big, but it's all feathers. And one of the neat things about it is their bones are hollow.
Wow.
Most of their bones are pneumatic, meaning they're hollow. So the air is able to, it's important because they're flying and they need to be lightweight. So So 1.5 pounds for Blue. I'm going to put her back, and then I wanted to quickly show you just the enclosure part of it and the red-tailed hawk. I won't talk too much while I'm with a red-tailed hawk because Blue is totally conditioned to me, but she's not, she is not, the outside wild bird is not conditioned to this. So I will keep my voice down, show you just the outside space really quickly, and then I can take any questions if you'd like. So just give me one moment. I also want to mention their tails. So birds, it's really important for their feathers to be, they preen. They'll go and clean their feathers daily. If you have a bird that's not feeling well, sometimes they look oily or greasy, or if they're totally down and covered in water, it's been raining and they don't look right, something's wrong with that bird. So owls in particular and other birds have called what's a uropygital gland. It's this tiny dot right here, and it holds oil. So the bird will take its beak, hit this, and then preen it through every feather to give that sort of waterproofing, which it needs to survive. If they're not waterproof, they're not flying. They're going to be hit, they're going to be eaten by something. So that's a really important thing too about birds of prey. Just bear with me while I get out here really quick. It'll be about 10 seconds. I wish I had more animals, but right now we just have one, which is good, meaning they don't need assistance. So this is the enclosure. We got it in Pennsylvania. We had unfreeze, get it here. A lot of supporters with the town. So for rehabbing birds of prey, you have to have 2 doors. So 1 door, 2 door for all of these spaces. It's required by law. Just in case they do escape one entry, there is a secondary door to prevent them from getting out. So in these spots, we can hold, I can put 2 to 3 birds of the same kind. So whether they're owls or hawks. For my professional job full-time, I help socialize animals and make sure they get along. So I feel like I can take part of that and apply it to these birds, because sometimes we'll get a juvenile red tail or an adult, and we'll have to sort of get them together and make sure that they're eating and there's no fighting. And we can look at that between injuries. And I have a baby scale I bring out here with me, and I'll put the scale here and then get a weight to make sure if they're gaining too much or they're losing, and then we can assess, do we need to separate the birds? But everything is specifically made for Raptor. So the perching, the diameter is even federally regulated how big this can be. And then the substrates that you're using, we can weather the birds when it's nice, take that off so they get sun, different perching again. And then these are the food platforms. That's one of the larger. If the bird is very stressed out and I don't want to go in because I don't want it to hurt itself, I have water spaces I can do just to change these out quick, as well as ports to be able to throw the food in without having to stress it out. Some birds, specifically Cooper's hawks, just are so stressed out being around humans that it's not worth risking it. So I would rather have them have a messy cage for a few days versus me going in and having them hit something. There's a smaller space in here. This would be for a kestrel, screech owl, anything small like that. Coopers have been in here, sharp-shinned hawks, but not a red tail or a barred owl that are an adult. It's too small. And this is exactly the same as the other side, smaller. And then this is the red tail, which I'll show quick, but you probably can't see it too well. This bird has been with us for quite some time. They found it with the primary feathers are just totally absent, and some of the secondary on one of the wings. So right now we're giving it time. They molt out starting in May through September. So we need to wait. We have to wait quite a bit to see if those feathers will ever return normally. The longest that I've ever had a patient here was maybe 1 year and 3 months. We had an owl that needed to grow out feathers. And again, there's no guarantee that they'll ever come back. So they may come back, or they may come back and not be normal. We had a red-tailed hawk that Tufts thought was electrocuted. So this is what a normal molted feather would look like. Falls out, very normal. This hawk, this is what it was dropping. They're just shards of shafts. There's nothing to them. So they felt like this bird maybe stepped on electrified wire, and then both sides of its wings were just trashed. So over time, these little pieces broke off and molted out, and we did release it actually with the police department here in Shoe Spray. So that was nice. So patients just range from, it might just be a few days if it's head trauma, something hitting a window, all the way up to, over a year. And we work with Fish and Wildlife. They do put restrictions. You can't just keep a patient forever. It doesn't work that way. You need to ask for specific extensions, otherwise it's illegal to keep them that long, and it doesn't help them. You want to make sure they're still wild up, they're still able to, hunt and have that sort of ability to know what to do. So yeah, that's what we do, taking in all the patients from the public, fielding calls in the summertime. It's upwards of maybe 20, 25 calls a day. Some are raptors, some are not. I try to leave a voicemail that's very specific. If you have another type of animal, who you can go to, there's lots of resources online if it's not a raptor. If you find something, I don't mind helping you. Raptors, I take no questions. If you find something else, I can help get you in the right direction. But that's it.
Wow.
Well, you didn't disappoint, Jessica. It was
No.
fascinating.
It's so hard. I feel bad when we're doing it this way, because I feel like it's so great to be able to do it again and be able to show Blue, but it's so nice when we're in person. So this is great, and I hope I get to meet you at some point too, in person.
Yeah.
Could I
Jessica,
ask a
I
couple
had
questions?
Go ahead.
Sure.
Well, first I want to say your presentation was fantastic.
Thank you.
It was clear, it was entertaining. I learned so much. Thank you very much for your work. I just have two questions. The first one is, if you have injured owls coming to you, do they do physical therapy like humans, or?
That's a great question. So for me, the step for me is a lot of, we do the medical management. If these places, say Tufts is closed, or they're not available, we will do the basic triage. I can do bandaging and trying to stop some bleeding. If they have ingested rodenticide, you will see bruising, their skin color changes, and they can be anything. Even trying to give fluids can result in such a bleeding because they're not able to clot. So we can give meds for that. The physical therapy part of it would be more tough. So they will put an animal under anesthesia, because trying to work with an awake raptor can be very difficult. So we can put them under and then do flexion and extension for limbs. They're doing cold therapy, like a cryo sort of, putting it on the limbs and things like that to see if that's helpful too. But yeah, they do PT, but it usually has to have the animal under anesthesia or intubated, because it can be really difficult while they're awake. Their first thing is, it's almost like an alien abduction when we're near them. This is their defense. It's normal and natural, but it's so hard to get anything out of them, or extend a wing. Maybe they had a fracture and they've placed an external fixator, which is like a metal piece to fix the bone. And when that piece comes off, you start in a small cage when they're injured, and as they progress, they're given more space. So here, it's to the point where they're almost ready to go, but they still could be here for months. But yes, the answer is their physical therapy options are available. Mm-hmm.
And are they available, all these owls, are they present all over the United States?
They are. So some of them, so we have the barred owl, we have great horned owls here, screech owls, which are tiny. They're a little bigger than a soda can. They're gray and red in color. But then we have ones that sort of migrate through that are saw-whets, long-eared owls, short-eared owls. Snowy owls are huge right now. All the birders, they go to Salisbury. They're going to, I think there were some down in Barnstable. So some migrate through, but barred owls are very, very common here. There was actually a big thing about them in the Midwest, where there's a spotted owl that looks just like a barred owl, but they compete, and spotted owls are on the decline. So they were trying to find a way to humanely manage the fact that these barred owls were growing in population, but they were killing the spotted owls. What do we do? So they're common. We have them. I have two now that are visiting. So the one that was visiting Blue outside is now calling out to another wild one. So sometimes I'll hear Blue and two others outside. They're super common here. Very common.
I'm sorry, I have one more question. When you were talking, all these different types of owls, do they ever crossbreed or no?
That's a great question. I have never seen it happen. We have seen hawks that have had some very, very distinct, whether the tail is of another bird or the coloring. So I don't want to say it's out of the question. I've never seen it, but with hawks, there's been a huge debate here in Massachusetts. I think it was in Boylston. where they did say that there was some crossbreeding, which was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And I could talk about, as much as I did for Blue, I could talk about every single one of them, but I felt like I wanted to talk about Blue more because she was physically here. But between Hawk and the differences and, some of the other types of raptors and their habitat and, breeding things and things like that, I just wanted to focus a little bit more on Blue.
Yeah. Blue's adorable. Thank you very much.
Beautiful.
Thanks. She's a girl. She is a girl. My daughter named her Blue because it's her favorite color. And then we did a test. We did a blood test. And we did a gender reveal party at Romaine's in Northborough. But it was before, this was going on almost 3 year ago. So we cut into a cupcake. Gerardo's made us a cupcake and we did it at a restaurant. And we found out that Blue was actually a female, but we still kept the name.
Yeah. Hello. Jessica, while you were doing your presentation, which was excellent, I was on the website, which is also excellent. Go, ladies. There's so many gorgeous pictures of these animals. My question is not so much about your information, but about donations. You have an Amazon list, and obviously money is always in need. Do you have a preference? Are you more in need of the Amazon, and is it up to date, the list that's out there?
It's up to date. So a lot of it is related to the baby season. A lot of it is cleaning supplies. So I do all of the laundry from so I have there's a basement downstairs that's all finished. And there's incubators that are lining up this room. We have oxygen down there. I didn't show you that part of it. Oxygen, all the medical things. I have a freezer where my mom joked around, I was never going to want a potential suitor because I have thawing mice and rats for the baby. It was like, there's no hope for you, Jess. There is no hope. Yeah. Did marry an officer in town. We got in touch because of an injured swan. That's the story. But as far as is updated, it's a lot of cleaning stuff. So like the puppy pee pads we use to line and clean, laundry detergent. So the most expensive thing in the springtime is food. And there's links to that. There's the GoFundMe. And then rodentpro.com is where I get the food from. So if anyone specifically wanted to purchase food, there is a list that says charities or animal rescues, and we're listed because we were talking about 501c3 and it was very, very difficult and very confusing to obtain when you're working full time and it's just such a small group that's doing this. We had a great lawyer that helped us obtain 501c3 status. And now if you wanted to do just for food, you can look at that website and pick us too. So it's up to you. There's those supplies that can just be purchased directly. And then there's the GoFundMe or the Rodent Pro too, because the food can be a lot. Right now, it's just the two, but sometimes we'll have 10 babies and we'll have maybe 6 patients outside. I do have a smaller enclosure too on the other side that we can hold one red-tailed hawk as well. But yeah, we've grown a lot over the last few years, which has been really.
So Jessica did provide me with an address if you prefer to write a check or instead of doing like a PayPal, where you could write a check to the Raptor Tail Rescue. And I can give that to Barb to send out to club members if people are interested in donating. But I do know that the executive board voted to send a donation to Raptor Tails to thank you for this and to help you with your work, which I think is really valuable.
Thank you. It's hard. There's about 200 and all your donations are tax deductible. We have an EIN number that is there and I can provide you with that. It's clearly on the website too. Facebook too, if you have Facebook, there are many, many more pictures. I find sometimes it's harder to update the website. So if you are on Facebook and you want to look up Raptor Tales, we have a lot of rescue missions and a lot of really great stories there as well.
Jessica, I love your sweatshirt.
Thank you.
That is so adorable with the book Tales, and yeah, I love it.
Telling the tale. Some people couldn't understand that it was a book, so thank you for saying that.
Yeah, I love it.
You gotta look at the spelling. You gotta look at the
Yeah.
Tales.
Blue is absolutely adorable. Beautiful bird and great presentation. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Like I said, we weren't really looking for the educational part of it because it is such a different component versus rehab and release. Like you're taking it on forever. You're committing to, they can live anywhere from 16 to 20 years in captivity. So I had to do a lot of really deep thinking. And then I said, I think it would be nice to just have this and be able to do this and show the public what they're all about. And being able to get up close and personal, I think is really important. And she isn't releasable due to the fact that she has no idea how to hunt and fend for herself. So she's here and she gets to meet a bunch of people and spread the word about raptors.
Yeah, excellent.
I took my grandsons to a presentation one time at Bellingham Library. They had the most beautiful birds there too. So
I bet it was Tom Riccardi. He's
it was a couple. I don't remember. I forget their name. It was a few years ago.
oh yeah, there's Mark and Marsha Wilson too. Eyes on Owls.
I
Yeah.
think that's who it was. Yeah, it was wonderful.
There's about
Kids
200.
loved it.
Yeah, there's about 200 rehabbers in Massachusetts, but about 15 or less specialize in birds of prey. And I'm the only one in Central Mass right now, so we get a lot of overflow from surrounding towns. And like I said, Tufts, where I used to work, we have a really great relationship back and forth between long-term care, short-term care. If I have an emergency, it's fantastic to be able to have that as a resource too.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful.
Thank you. This is great.
Yeah. Jessica, I have one question for you. Our yard backs up to conservation land and we always have hawks looking over all the birds and everything. But my question was, today, it seemed like there were a bunch of hawks out and I didn't know if that had anything to do with the snow or the weather or.
So I think it's a combination of both. We had some really great days, really warm days, and we have too, and we've been noticing them more lately, but they also are starting to pair up. So they're pairing up for mating, and I don't know what kind you're seeing. The migrating ones are coming back. So broadwing hawks are coming back and they come in kettles was what it's called. It's almost like a flock. So when they leave and you go to like Wachusett Mountain on certain days and times, you can see them leave hundreds, like these circles. And when they return, it's sort of very similar. And the same with turkey vultures. In the fall, you'll see the group starting to go. And in the springtime, it's a little bit early, but it's not impossible. So it could be a combination of you have some really great food in your yard, the weather, and now with the snow, they're really trying to make up for maybe some lost time and migration.
Okay.
If you ever get pictures, you can send them to me and I can try to help you tell you what trend.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. It's been a wonderful program.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
It's
Yeah.
great. It's
And
nice
I
to be able
love-
to
I love Lou.
share my information.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, well, thank you. And
Bye.
have a
Bye,
great,
Jess.
have a great day. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.